If you're ready to stop living from limitation and start living from truth, you are in the right place. This is Salt and Light, Renewed Mind podcast, where we rewire our minds, restore our lives, and walk it out in faith. Have you ever had a moment in life that should have ended years ago, but somehow it still has power over you? Maybe nobody else sees it. Maybe on the outside you look strong, capable, faithful, functional. But inside, there's still a place that reacts a little too quickly, shrinks too easily, and braces for disappointment, or works overtime to prove something that should have already been long settled. And if you're honest, the pain is not even in the present. It's old, but it still keeps speaking. That's what we're going to talk about today. Because a lot of us aren't just living from habits, we're living from wounds. And wounds have a voice. They preach, they interpret, they narrate. They tell you what to expect. They tell you who you are. They tell you what is safe. They tell you what to fear. And if they're not healed, they become beliefs. And those beliefs become filters. And those filters begin shaping our entire life. Welcome to Salt and Light, Renewed Mind podcast. This is not just a conversation about positive thinking. It's about healing, alignment, and truth. Because if your mind's going to be renewed, you have to be honest about what's forming it. Some of us are trying to fight patterns without ever dealing with the pain underneath them. We're frustrated with our reactions, frustrated with our inconsistency, frustrated with the fact that we keep ending up in the same emotional places, rot and ruts. What if those patterns aren't random? What if they're rooted? What if there's a place in your story where something happened and a belief was formed there? What if you've been living from that belief ever since, maybe without knowing it? This is why it matters. People don't just have to struggle with behaviors, they struggle with interpretations. Something happened, and somewhere along the line, our heart drew a conclusion. Perhaps you're overlooked, and the conclusion was, I don't matter. Maybe you gave everything, and it still wasn't enough. And the conclusion was, no matter what I do, I always fall short. Maybe somebody left. Maybe someone betrayed you. Maybe someone mishandled your trust, and the conclusion was, people are not safe. Maybe you failed in a season that mattered to you deeply, and the conclusion was, I can't even trust myself, never mind the world. Maybe you were strong for so long, for so many people, that you stopped being honest about your own weariness. And the conclusion was, my value is in what I carry, not who I am. Do you see this? For me, the moment was forged before age 4 and had power over me for 50 years and ultimately ruined my life. I'll share more about that with you. Back to the roots topic. The moment that still has power. The event may have been temporary, but the belief stayed. And once a belief stays, it begins to shape more than just your thinking. It shapes your posture, shapes how you enter rooms, shapes how you handle conflict, how you receive correction, how you deal with silence, how you read people, how you respond with delay, how you carry disappointment, how quickly you assume rejection. Maybe you think you're not enough. This is why two people can walk into the same moment and come out with completely different internal worlds and narratives. Because what shaped them isn't just what happened right there. It's what was based in the past. And this is where many of us become stuck. People think they need more discipline, more information, more motivation, more tips, more strategies. And these things matter. But if a belief is rooted in pain, information alone doesn't uproot it. You can know better and still live bound. You can love God and still live braced. You can pray sincerely and still find yourself reacting from an old place. Not because you're fake, not because you're weak, not because your faith isn't real. It's based on unhealed places that have a way of hijacking our present moment. That's why we need to go deeper than just behavior. Let me say it this way. You're not always reacting to what's happening. You're reacting to what that moment reminds you of. That's why reaction feels bigger in the moment. Perhaps somebody takes too long to respond to your text and it feels like abandonment. Somebody gives you feedback and it feels like inadequacy or criticism. Something doesn't work out and it feels like failure. Somebody is distant and you see it as rejection. You're not living in the present. You're living in both the present and more the past. And unless you recognize that, you're going to keep mislabeling what you struggle with. You'll call yourself too sensitive or too emotional, too much, too broken, too inconsistent. And what's happening is this. A wound is still informing the way you see. And that's where the enemy is subtle. Because he doesn't want to openly destroy you sometimes. Sometimes he just needs to keep you in agreement with a bad interpretation and not the truth of God. And if he can keep you believing lies like I'm not enough, I'm always overlooked, I have to perform to be loved, I'm always going to struggle, then he doesn't have to shout. He can whisper. The lie will work quietly. It will make you second guess, hide, overfunction, numb out, stay guarded, stay defensive, stay striving, stay small. Here's the hard part. Sometimes the lie feels wise. It feels protective. It feels like discernment. It feels like caution. It feels like strength. But really, it's just fear dressed up as wisdom. It's self-protection that has gone unchecked for too long, and it starts to feel normal. This is why healing requires honesty. You have to be willing to ask, what have I come to believe because of what I've been through? Not what I say around others, not what I know intellectually, not what I can quote from scripture or from psychology or from science. What do I actually believe when life gets hard? What belief shows up when I'm tired? What belief shows up when I'm disappointed? What belief shows up when I feel unseen? Or if I prayed for something and it doesn't happen? That's the real work. Because whatever is showing up there is revealing the story that is still operating beneath the surface. The truth is that some of us have built up patterns around these false conclusions. You don't speak up because somewhere along the line you learned that your voice doesn't matter. You over-explain because somewhere along the line you learned that you must justify your worth. You overwork because you learned that rest feels unsafe. You're settling because you don't want to get disappointed. You're guarded because you learned that vulnerability is expensive. You keep achieving without feeling settled because somewhere along the line you learned that love must be earned. These are not random traits, they are clues. And if you pay attention, your patterns will tell you your pain. That is why you don't just need behavior management or modification. You need truth and healing. Scripture says that being transformed, we can do that by renewing our mind. That means the mind can be renewed. It also means that it's shaped by something that needs replacing. Renewal isn't just pretending that something didn't wound you. Renewal is not spiritual bypassing. Renewal isn't putting a Bible verse on something to just explain your pain and not examine it. Renewal is letting God into the place where the lie was born. It's bringing a wound into the light so that truth can speak louder than the conclusion that you drew in darkness. That's the real work. That's the holy work. And for some of you, that is a turning point. Because maybe for years, you've been trying to fix the fruit without ever examining the root. Maybe you focus on the reaction, the inconsistency, the fear, the striving, the people-pleasing, the emotional shutdown, the defensive posture. But beneath it all is a deeper question. What happened to me there? What did I start believing because of it? I want to give you a picture. Imagine a woman who's very capable. She loves God. She shows up for people. She's responsible, strong, reliable. But every time she's not chosen or not acknowledged or responded to, something drops in her immediately. Outwardly, she keeps it together. But inwardly, the story starts up fast. See? I don't matter. I'm forgettable. No matter what I give, it's never enough. Now, maybe what happened in the present moment for her was small. A missed text, a delayed response, a moment where somebody else got the opportunity. But the reaction isn't about the moment. It's touching on something old and deeper, rooted in a rotten rut. And until she recognizes that, she's going to keep on trying to manage the emotion instead of confronting the belief. This is why naming it matters. You cannot break agreement with something you will not identify. So here's the question. What belief is beneath your pattern? Not just what the pattern is, what the belief is beneath it. Beneath the fear, the hustle, the shutdown, the insecurity, the control, the avoidance. What's the story operating there? And is that story true? Does it agree with the character of God? Does it agree with who he says you are? Does it produce freedom, stability, humility, courage, peace? Or does it feel true because you've just rehearsed it for so long? Here's where scripture becomes personal. Take every thought captive. That means not every thought gets to stay. Not in every interpretation gets authority in your life. Not every internal narrative gets to keep speaking to you unchecked. Thoughts need to be challenged. Beliefs need to be exposed. Some inner agreements need to be broken. You cannot live into a restored life while you're still protecting a distortion. I want to be really clear. Healing is not pretending that the wound was small. Healing is not minimizing what happened. Healing is not saying, well, that was a long time ago, so I should be over it. It doesn't matter. If it's shaping how you live, it matters. If it's still distorting how you see, it matters. If it's still affecting your capacity to trust, rest, receive, speak, obey, move forward, it matters. It does not get to keep ruling you. There is a line. It matters, but it does not get to keep ruling you. That's the beautiful part of surrender. God doesn't want us just to put forth our polished parts. He wants access to the places that we learn to protect. He wants access to the memory, the grief, the disappointment, the rejection, the shame, the false conclusions. Not to shame us for it, but to heal us there. To tell us truth there. To restore what is twisted and distorted there. To remind you that one painful moment does not get to shape the rest of your life. One betrayal does not get to define your worth. One disappointment does not get to define your future. One failure does not get to define your identity. One season of silence does not mean God has abandoned you. You are not what wounded you. You are not what left you. You are not what failed. You are not what conclusion the pain led you to. You are God, who God told you you are. You are who you are in God's identity in you. A renewal begins when you stop letting pain do all the talking. Here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to rush past this. I want you to sit with it. What moment still has more power over you than it should? What belief was formed there? Where does that belief still show up in your life today? Write it down. Be honest. Name the wound. Name the lie. Name the pattern. Because what stays in the dark, unnamed, often stays in control of your life. Once you name it, you bring truth and light to it. Not vague truth, specific truth. A lie matters if you give it power. It has power in the darkness. If a lie is overlooked, you need to bring light there. If a lie that you believed that you need to perform to be loved, bring truth there. If the lie is that you'll never be safe, bring light and truth there. If the lie is, I will always struggle, bring light and truth there. This is not pretending to be unaffected. It's not about refusing to see things how they are. It's bringing truth and life to what is. It's not about fixing everything in the moment. It's about becoming honest and stop living on autopilot. It's about recognizing what we call personality must be from pain. We call it wisdom. It's actually fear. What we call independence is actually self-protection. What we say is being realistic is actually agreement with disappointment. Here's some good news. What has been learned can be unlearned. What has been distorted can be renewed. What has been wounded can be healed. What has been formed in pain can be reformed in truth and light. That is the work. That is the invitation. That is where freedom begins. So I want to leave you with this. Pay attention to the places where your reactions are a little too loud. Pay attention to the places where the patterns repeat. Pay attention to the places where the emotions feel older than the moment you're in. There's information there. There's history there. There may be a wound there that's been quietly shaping your life for longer than you realized. It does not have to keep doing that. Let God meet you there. Let truth and light speak there. Let healing begin there. And let this be the season where you stop managing symptoms and start dealing with roots. If any of this spoke to you, share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Please follow me as we continue this journey of renewing our mind, healing deeply, and living aligned with truth. If any of this spoke to you, don't just listen, apply it. Take one thought, align it with truth, and begin the shift. And if you know somebody who needs to hear this, share it with them, because transformation multiplies when it's shared. This is how we become salt and light, not just by what we believe, but how we live. Reveal, reset, renew, restore. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next episode.